7:30 on this Wednesday morning, I want to say. Welcome along to OTB AM, the Off the Ball breakfast show, live every single morning, as per usual, from 7:30. Adrian Barry with me this morning. Adrian, very good morning.
Good morning to you, Shane, Kathleen, Colm.
Colm, good morning.
Hi Shane, how are you?
Kathy, good morning.
Good morning.
It's like the Brady Bunch. You know the start of the Brady Bunch where they're looking up and down at each other on the screen at the start of the...
Yeah.
So we just have
this
to
is the Arctic Monkeys
kind of
that
before my time.
people wanted to hear on Friday night. This is the Arctic Monkeys that people wanted to hear.
Oh, yeah.
All I was getting on my Twitter was the much maligned Alex Turner now.
So the Glastonbury performance didn't go...
No, I think they played a lot of their new stuff, and he's kind of a bit of a crooner now, isn't he?
I think it depends on who you follow as well. Like, I saw other people being like it was the best thing they ever saw, and like it was absolutely majestic, and it was a moment of pure magic on a weekend of Glastonbury.
I heard the first encore song, and there wasn't much to get you going. Like you'd be exiting pretty quickly.
Didn't play any of the classics.
Wasn't it a thing that he was singing slightly off pace to how most of the classics are normally sung, so it was really hard for the crowd to actually sing along with them?
He would be a contrarian like that. Yeah. Well, it was playing in the house anyway, in home in Cork, and Bill Buig's like, "What's that?" It's never good if Bill Buig's "What's that?" Not even like,
"What's that racket?"
Yeah,
was that the
it was back in the Ghetto Blaster days in the 90s.
That wasn't a commentary on the quality of that particular gig, I would imagine, as opposed to that.
No, it was like, what kind of song is this to play? He was saying.
I'm not going to lie to you, and I'm going to piss off my mother by saying this, but I feel the same about Elton John. You'd think Rocket Man, etc. I'd be an Elton John fan. I really...
That's just curmudgeonly now, Shane.
I don't appreciate Elton John.
That's just
really
cracky.
I think he's a brilliant artist, and I understand the draw of him, but I've seen videos of him, the behind the scenes videos where he's a bit of a asshole to some of his...
Did you see the film?
No, I haven't seen the film.
Very good. Now that would change your opinion, I think.
Possibly.
Yeah.
And sure, aren't they all on some level? Like,
well, there's egos going around there, I suppose. And in fairness to Elton John, he's a top artist. So we won't get into Elton John critique.
Top artist.
Elton John is a top artist.
Exactly what our YouTube commenters are coming for.
Yeah.
At that moment.
Well, I wanted to talk potato meanies on the show this morning, but I'm presuming I'm not going to be allowed to. They've changed my life this morning.
I feel like I have to try them after we had a big discussion in the office yesterday, and Phil was so like, I don't know, the texture isn't good, and then I went up to the 5th floor to get an orange juice because sadly they no longer come down to our floor.
Yeah. And
I found Colm Buig and Phil both with 3 packets of potatoes in each hand. 6 between the two of them because they were so good.
Sorry, this isn't a paid endorsement. This is a public service announcement more so than anything else. So meanies.
Greedy.
Meanies in a potato texture.
3 is
greedy.
That's a lot.
3 is the maximum.
Was this yesterday, Kathleen?
No, it was this morning.
Sorry, this morning.
Yeah. 3 is the maximum you could take
Pre-just
of anything free.
Yeah. Oh, that's fair.
Yeah.
I only took 2 myself because I'm...
Or 1,
modest.
of course, and then allow, for other people
I gave a pack to Adam outside there.
Fair.
Very generous.
You were I saw you do that actually. Yeah. It was like those people that film nice things, and they're doing something nice.
It's
like,
good
everyone
PR.
Look at me doing this nice
good
thing.
PR. It's not around though.
Yeah,
so.
good PR. So the Republic of Ireland women's squad for the World Cup is going to be named, we expect, 11 a.m, just before 11 a.m. this morning. Vera Pauw was certainly supposed to speak at 11, and there was a report in the Irish Examiner late yesterday evening from John Fallon with what we're calling it, a leaked squad, or certainly the
Emma
squad.
Duffy in the 42 is also reporting the same stuff, so it seems pretty legit.
So Kathleen, what are we thinking here? Judging by this squad, Aoife Mannion and Megan Campbell won't be among the 23 players at the World Cup. Leanne Kiernan also will not be involved. Jamie Finn on the standby list, it appears. And Saoirse Noonan also overlooked in favour, you would expect, for Abby Larkin, the home base player, of course. How do we feel about this?
When I initially saw it last night, I was a bit like, I felt like I'd been kicked. I was like, oh no, this is terrible. Just particularly Aoife Mannion and Megan Campbell both not being fit enough to travel or even beyond the +3 player list was quite a blow. I think over the last couple of weeks, Vera Pauw and like the FAI in general have kept a very tight hash on where both players were at in terms of their return to play. Like even when we asked the FAI what the situation was with Mannion before she had her first scan when the Premier League squad was announced and she wasn't in it, their response afterwards was like, there's nothing scary there, she just needs time. And you're like, okay, well, just needs time is like she just needs a nap, she needs like a weekend, she needs a couple of months to recuperate. What's that mean? And then I think because she posted that video of her getting on an Aer Lingus flight yesterday, everyone was a bit like, oh, is this a good sign? Is this not? Clearly it wasn't, and maybe she didn't think it was either or what was going to happen would happen if she was posting pictures. But and then Megan Campbell has been a strange one because she hasn't really been involved in the squad or with Liverpool all that much since like before the US games, but there's never really been all that much information on what's actually wrong with her and what injury she's returning from. She was at the game against Zambia on, what day was that, last Thursday, and she was walking around afterwards in her tracksuit and like signing things with the fans. Obviously she had given her place in the squad hotel to Izzy Atkinson, who wasn't actually in even the preliminary squad initially. She was kind of one of the standby players. So yeah, those are two big losses because those are like two of your starting 11 that are 100% apparently not going. But the others, I mean, Leanne Kiernan, we've had so many backs and forths about her, but I suppose it must have come down to the fact she just hasn't played enough football. She's probably played maybe just under a full game since September. I know, like Karen said on Coigig, that she was one of the few that was kind of breaking the line for Ireland against Zambia in that first half, but I also just thought she looked really rusty. Like her first touch was really poor at different chances, and obviously as an Ireland team we don't have a lot of opportunities to score, so when you do get them you really need to pounce on them. So I'm not massively surprised about that. Not really that surprised about Jamie Finn either. I had her on my standby list for the team I did yesterday.
Finn started against Scotland, wasn't she? She's a bit of a favourite she can play in a number of positions, I guess, which is the argument for her. Well,
but she has kind of fallen out of favour in recent times. Like she was at the Finland game, she got a ban for. Did she start against Scotland? I thought she. Oh, sorry.
I think she started against Scotland.
I thought she got maybe it was a Scotland game. Then she got a ban for. She got another yellow card, but she has fallen out of favour with Vera Pauw in recent months, and even the fact that she wasn't really looking like she was getting on Thursday, I would have thought she was one of the players that would have needed the time to show up for Vera. So the fact that she didn't even get near the starting team or that team that came on in the second half, that's what made me think she might be a standby player, because she has that history of getting in quite regularly before, but also wasn't getting the opportunity in that game. So yeah, quite surprised Harriet Scott is on the cohort of 3, and then of course we're bringing 4 goalkeepers, which I don't
understand that.
That's mad. Yeah.
There used to be a coach. Was it Brian Clough? I was thinking about this yesterday, but there was a coach who didn't.
Yeah,
never used to put
Phil Jagielka used to be the stand-in goalkeeper, and they bring on a defender instead. Yeah, that was a waste of the space. That's probably the extreme, though, isn't it?
Kiernan, I feel most sympathy for in the whole mix, I must say. Like the others, obviously, as we've touched on, there are bits of injuries, niggling injuries and stuff, and so you can kind of, it's like not the most unexpected thing in the world. Whereas Kiernan, like obviously her goal scoring record for Ireland would need to be better, I think, to make it a no-brainer. But she's gone from what you would think would be starting 11. Is she in the 11? Is she on the bench? To not been in the squad. And I think that she's obviously had to battle injuries over the last few years. That's definitely hampered her. I do remember her time under Colin Bell with Ireland and how frustrating that was for her, because she was like coming into the international season as a very young player at that stage, and she was been left to forage alone, and that must have been hard for her. And it just feels like she can't catch a break, and she's the one that I think that will probably feel most hard done by probably this morning.
Yeah, like, this is what I said before, and I got a bit of grief about it from certain people, but like, Vera Pauw has never been a fan of Leanne Kiernan. Even when she was playing in the championship and she was like top scorer in the championship, whipping in goals every other week for Liverpool and doing so in impressive form. I know you can say like, well, championship's different standard to WSL. Of course it is, but when she did have her brief opportunity to play in the WSL, she looked as good. But Vera Pauw, because of the way she's always set up this team, has just never really seemed to favour Leanne Kiernan.
Why do you think that is the case?
I think because she is more of that out-and-out striker position, and Vera prefers players who can do a multitude of things, and also has always preferred playing with like a back 5 or a back 4 and focusing on defence and midfield rather than our attack. But it never made sense for me that we were playing, say, someone like Heather Payne alone up top. And like, Heather is great. I think she's far more suited to the wings where she is now, but like that, she didn't have necessarily the like goal poaching ability, but she had the running ability. So like, she could start off deep in the other half and all of a sudden run the ball up the whole way, but then would lose a bit of steam, or she'd be able to take the ball down when it was hoofed up to her, but also didn't have the necessary skill to kind of take it in a little bit further and take her shot. Whereas I always thought Leanne Kiernan did have that ability if we gave her more time within the squad. Now maybe it is a case that, obviously, like you said, Adrian, she has had quite a few injuries over the last couple of years, and some quite serious ones that she struggled to come back from. But she did have that whole run in the championship where she just wasn't utilised from an Irish perspective, which is why when she had only played like less than 90 minutes of football this season, this half of the season, I was a bit like, I don't know if Vera is going to put her trust in her, considering she wasn't doing it when she was playing regularly.
And she got that half against Zambia. Like, she's not scoring the goals for Ireland, and as you say, when you're in and out of the team, maybe that's harder, but then when you're in the team, the pressure is on to actually do it. She got that half against Zambia. She had few very heavy touches, I thought, and like, if you were Vera Pauw in that conversation, and she probably had her mind 99.9% made up anyway, but you're looking at that, and as much as Amber Barrett scoring in the second half endorsed that selection, the heavy touches probably just meant that was it for her. Like,
yeah,
it became
I think
a no-brainer.
and I think as well, the whole thing that Vera said afterwards was that, like, the team were scared to fail in that first half, and that's what let them down. Now, I did think, in fairness to Kiernan, she did break the line a couple of times and did try stuff, but the only thing is she was offside, and I was like, it's so hard to know, like, maybe because Vera's seen her in training, she's going to know this better, but like, is that hasn't had a lot of match time, and with like a bit of training, some competitive time, can she get that back? Maybe Vera thinks it's too much of a risk to try and get that back in the next 3 weeks until the actual tournament kicks off. So yeah.
Does it mean that Amber Barrett is guaranteed to start?
I don't know if it means she's absolutely guaranteed to start, but it definitely gives her a better chance of starting.
Do you think there was any danger that Barrett wasn't going to travel if she didn't have the half against Zambia?
I think so, yeah. I mean, I've said this all along, and like, even Barrett herself said it when we talked to her after the Zambia game. She was like, this is the first time in months I've actually relaxed, because I felt like for so long, like, she was in the exact same position as, say, Leanne Kiernan was, in the sense that she hadn't played, I don't think she'd played more than like 60 minutes of football since like January or something, in terms of like with her club team and stuff, between injuries, and then also with it just sounded like she was just not in a good position there with the club, even though she was very respectful of them and like the history that they have. It just sounded like whatever the coaching setup was possibly wasn't getting on all that well with them. So she was kind of in that similar position, in that she needed game time and she needed the opportunity to prove herself. And I think, like she said, mentally that penalty was important, but I think more so that scoring from play was really important. Yeah, I mean, you couldn't have asked for a nicer goal as well to score.
I think she was going for what it's worth. We had this conversation a while ago, obviously, but I did feel that, like, that ability to be able to turn to somebody in a World Cup who said to me, give me the ball, put me in and I can score. It'd be interesting to find out later on, was she in the team, was she in the squad before she got those goals or not? I think that would be interesting.
Presumably Vera Pauw will reveal little bits of that kind of information at the press conference. She'll certainly be asked.
It'll be interesting to know as well, though, because like Vera's been so, I mean, I'm surprised even that the team has leaked as much as it has. I thought maybe you might hear one or two names, but she's been very strict on the fact that she's aware that a lot of players are going to be absolutely devastated this morning that they've missed out on, you know, one of the great opportunities to be part of the first ever squad to go to a World Cup on the women's side. So I don't know how much she's going to go into. Well, she'll obviously be asked, but I don't know how much she's going to go into, like, oh yeah, this person was like 95% there and like the 5%.
Well, you try and give some of those players a bit of cold comfort, wouldn't you? Like, you were close.
Is that comfort though?
Maybe not.
Do you have a preferred starting team for the opener against Australia, knowing what we know?
Oh, I feel like because of the injuries now and the players that aren't going, I would need to like almost sit down and re-go through all my positions, because like I would have had Mannion and Megan Campbell in definitely, and obviously that's going to change the back line now, so I assume it's the thing. It's also like, who does Vera bring instead of them? So defensively, does that mean like Claire O'Riordan's in? Does it mean Megan Connolly dropping back into the back, and then that leaves a position open in midfield. So then do you bring Ciara Grant in her place, because she can kind of play in a couple of different positions, or do you stick someone like Hayley Nolan in there, who was like voted player of the championship this year? So I think at the moment my starting 11 will be a little unsettled depending on who else Vera decides to put in the squad.
The Mannion injury must be really
I'll
bad.
tell you tomorrow morning.
I definitely thought it was an opportunity. Like Kathleen, I think, was making the point in the show yesterday that she tends to use sort of 15 players anyway, right? So there's a whole pile of players who are going out there, and of course it's an unbelievable thing to have in your CV, whether you play or not. I was at the World Cup and that's it, and you're on the inside looking at it, and that's pretty cool. But on the basis that she's probably going to use about 15 players over the course of it, unless the Mannion injury is really bad, I would have thought there was some case for still bringing her, even though I accept that she'll come back from injury. You'd have to accept that she obviously won't have that match sharpness, but we know sort of the impact that she can have from an Irish point of view. It must have been very tempting to include her on the basis that she's not going to play the first couple of games. Maybe she'll get in for the last game, and maybe whatever happens beyond that, like that, it would have been almost on that basis worth taking the risk.
Yeah, this has been the great debate of the last couple of weeks. I think every single person I've talked to has a different take on it. So I was chatting to Emma Byrne last night about it, and she was saying that Vera was making one of the greatest mistakes she could ever make by not including the girls, even though they may be able to, well, like obviously we don't know the depths of the injuries, but if there's a potential for them to be fit for even one or two of the games, it's worth bringing them. And then Karen Duggan was having the complete opposite opinion, and I think she makes a fair point, and it's something a couple of people have brought up to me, is that you, maybe less so Megan Campbell, but say Aoife Mannion, she has so few caps and she's played so few times with the team, and by all accounts she slotted in very well with the squad when she was there. Like I didn't talk to anyone who didn't say she was lovely, but she also hasn't been on that journey with the team. And if you're leaving out either a younger player or someone a veteran with the squad, or someone within the squad who carries a good standing or keeps a squad on an even keel in terms of a personality, does that sort of stuff matter as well? And is, like, how much is Vera weighing up that when making these decisions? Which, to be honest, having never been in a professional setup, wasn't even something I had really thought of. I was literally thinking about the 11 on the pitch and like whatever 4 or 5 subs might come on at various different stages. And a lot of people have been going back and forth by which is more important. And the thing is, we can probably never settle on it because we're not in that squad and we don't know fully what the dynamics are between players and coaches. And, you know, maybe there's people in the squad who'd be happier to see someone who's there that they get on with really well, who they've trekked through the last however 10 years with, or else someone who they know going to a World Cup is going to ensure the next 10 years of Irish football and major competitions. So it's a tough one. I don't know, is there a way that you fall down on it, Adrian? Do you think it's definitely the bring them even if they are injured?
The only doubt in the response to the question is how injured she is. Like if it's a case and she'll get asked today, she might say she ain't coming back for another 6 weeks properly, and that's for sure, that's definite, there's no question about it, then I think then it's a no-brainer. But I definitely think on the basis that there isn't going to be mix and match, it'll be best 11 on the pitch every single time, then there is a case for bringing her. Like,
if you're in England or USA, I think you take those players, don't you? If you're expected to go deep in the tournament and you're like, we're going to have time, do you bring these players in? If you're Ireland, you might have only 3-4 games.
It's
maybe
the unanswerable about how injured she is.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Maybe, like, I'd say Vera Pauw knows more.
Like, there is a case.
You know that there is
a case for it. Like, and the Campbell one, like,
they might have explored that option already though a few days ago. Like, surely there's a case to bring her, and there's just none. I'm sure she'll explain today.
You shed a tear over the lack of the long throw-in. You do.
Well, you do.
Like, you really do, because it would have been.
Well, also her as a player, like, but
yeah, look at sure, but like the long throw, like whatever. Like, how much time would we have spent talking about the threat of the long throw in match previews?
It's spot on.
I mean, it was practically a another set piece for us.
But we not have just got her on the pitch, like just to do. What injury does she have? What's the injury?
But that's the thing. It hasn't really been reported what injury she has.
Well, unless it affects her arms.
Yeah. She'll have that answer. She'll have the answer ready to go today. Like, she's going to be asked that.
Yeah.
That's the first question almost.
I mean, it just said that in the articles today that she'd been struggling with fitness, and like I know even when she wasn't included in the US squad or the squad that travelled to the US, there wasn't a whole lot of information about what it was, and it's been the same out of Liverpool in the time. Like I don't think she played again after that for them. Maybe a couple of minutes, but nothing mad.
Yeah,
we will find out later this morning. So we're obviously working off the preliminary reports, the so-called leaked squad that's to be confirmed by Vera Pauw later this morning. So all 31 players were apparently informed of their status yesterday, and Vera Pauw will of course convey the background to the media at the UCD Bowl later on this morning. So we'll update you on that as soon as we hear news. I should before we move on or come back rather to the squad, I should mention what's coming up between now and 10 o'clock on OTB AM this Wednesday morning. So standing by at around 7:55 AM in the next 5-10 minutes, we'll be chatting to Martin Lipton. Harry Kane, of course, looks potentially set for a move to Bayern Munich, so that'll be a move that Spurs fans will be interested to hear your thoughts. Let us know in the YouTube comments this morning. At 8:15 we'll have John Fallon, who as we said earlier wrote one of those pieces, his piece in the Irish Examiner, of course, that appears to hint at the nature of this Irish squad for the World Cup. At 8:30 we'll have Will O'Callaghan's power rankings, hurling power rankings, of course. We'll see if those change or have changed since the weekend's games, of course. Keith Woods, you had to be there. Really looking forward to this at 10 to 9 as well. We have a bit of time to go through it with Keith, and he's picked out 5 of the moments from his career that he most remembers, performances that stand out for him, and then Matt Slater highlights from him at 9:30. Like when you think of the I guess the news that was conveyed to players over the last 24 hours or so, you think of the likes of Saoirse Noonan down in Cork, who's been disappointed potentially. Denise O'Sullivan on the other hand, we saw some video yesterday. I think we have some footage of this down in Cork, the going away party, I want to say. This is outside her mother's house or her home house in Cork. Yeah, not the uni, no, it's like uni city.
Yeah, I think it was local that organised it. It's going to be a lot bigger than she expected it to be. And was it the Nottingham band that turned up as well? Apparently Denise was like absolutely beetroot at this stage. It's funny, for all she's like a showwoman on the pitch, she's not necessarily a big showy sort of person. You could just see in some of the photos there were of her last night doing the rounds on Twitter and other parts of social media how absolutely delighted she was. She was just like laughing her head off the whole time. So that is the other side of this, to people missing out, that there are also players like herself and Katie and whoever else makes this squad who very much deserve this. It's a difficult thing because the ones who miss out deserve it. The ones who get there deserve it as well. It's the nature of this being our first ever tournament. It's particularly hard to see people miss out, and it's particularly good to see how happy the ones are that are making it.
For some of them, like the proudest day of their careers is going to be today when they're picked in a World Cup squad, and probably only overtaken maybe on July 20th when they actually play in a World Cup match.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing them and all their families and stuff tonight in the Mansion House at the Off the Ball Sky event. Should be good.
100%.
Be chatting to them all tomorrow as well, so there'll be interviews with all 23 players between myself, Nathan and Aisling. We have an hour to get round to every single player.
No pressure.
So it's going to be a little bit of a speed dating situation, but should be good crack.
Looking forward to the Mansion House as well. That'll be a lot of smiley heads, no doubt, this evening, as you say. Kathleen, did want to touch on this before we move on. Robbie Keane back in management with Maccabi Tel Aviv in Israel, new head coach, and the quotes from him in the papers certainly this morning. He was asked about somewhat negative reaction on social media to his appointment on a two-year contract to manage a club in Israel. He says, "This is the last time I will say it. I do not want to get into the politics. I'm here as a football man and as someone who loves the game." So the Ireland-Palestine Solidarity Campaign had said after this appointment, there is a Palestinian sporting boycott and called for the expulsion of the Israeli FA from FIFA and UEFA due to apartheid Israel's crimes against the Palestinian people. So it's deeply disappointing to see Robbie Keane go to manage Maccabi Tel Aviv. This is an interesting one, lads. So he was asked to address a number of different topics, but of course this link and controversy about him managing a club in Israel is clearly not something he wants to get into.
Well, this is his first full-time managerial gig for Robbie Keane, and he's clearly had to scrape and scratch around for it. He's been obviously number 2 at a load of different places, including with Ireland. Do you remember the Mick McCarthy conference where he said, how did all this come about? And Mick said, the cheeky bee, sort of elbowed his way into the gig. And that's fair enough. That's kind of tends to be how a lot of it happens. You imagine he must have been in the mix he must have interviewed for an awful lot of gigs.
Yeah.
I'm sure if he's going there, it's not his lifelong boyhood ambition to get to Israel, right? So I'm assuming that Maccabi Tel Aviv is some way down the list of clubs that Robbie Keane wants. I'm sure that he must have been looking at League 1, League 2 teams, if that's the case, and just failing to be able to get a break for it. But I certainly looked at those quotes. He before he said that he was here as a football man and someone who loves the game, he said, this is the last time I'll say it. Like, there was definitely the vibe of it's my ball and I'm taking it and I'm going home about the comments, and a blindness almost to what was going on around him. What I couldn't understand is why he didn't just sit down and look at, I don't know, I'm assuming the club, who've been through 7 managers in the last 3 years, are briefing the managers that come in to talk about this stuff, and probably briefing them all in the same sort of way, as in saying nothing. But how couldn't you sit down and say, look, there clearly are issues in this country. Clearly much of it is not good. Innocent people are dying. Innocent people are being targeted. While I'm here, I'm going to educate myself a little bit about all that stuff, and I'll speak about that down the line.
Simple.
This sort of, you're sat there now. You say, like, obviously about a reaction on social media, and he talks about politics. But I mean, it's not politics. Like, I was looking up last night some of the areas that he's now associating himself with. One report that I read on a Human Rights Watch website was saying that across 4 days in May this year, while targeting members and commanders of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad movement, Israel killed 33 people, and it says that includes 6 children and 3 women. How can you be blind to that stuff so much as to sit down and say, I'm a football man and I'm not talking about it anymore? There's
a sniff of Eddie Howe being asked about the Saudi Arabian links in one of his early press conferences when they came on board, and very much him saying, I don't want to talk about this, I'm a football manager. You've got the reaction from different politicians in Ireland as well. Sinn Féin TD Chris Andrews had a strong statement, declared Maccabi as an apartheid club, an account of Israel's actions in Palestine.
It's also just silly coming out with those quotes when you consider the links that Ireland has with Palestine and like how strong the BDS movement is here in general.
Presumably Robbie Keane was aware of Ireland's strong links with Palestine.
Well, you'd say presumably, but like there's nothing presumptuous about it. Like maybe he doesn't. Maybe he doesn't have a clue about stuff that's going on. Like someone who has spent their life so dedicated, and I'm not saying it's an excuse. I absolutely do not think it is. I think someone should have pulled him aside and been like, just checking, you do know what you're getting yourself into here. But like in some ways I find his stuff almost worse than Eddie Howe, because it's one thing having the money come in and you're still sitting pretty in Newcastle, and it's another thing going to the country, driving through certain parts of the country or going to different towns where like it's occupied territory, or like you're properly engrossing yourself in the culture and in everything that's happening around you, and then to just sit back and just be like, I know, it's just about the football, lads. It's all about the football.
Even if he wants to stay a football man, like you said, it's very difficult to concentrate what success is going to be like at that club. Like they've been through a raft of managers the last couple of years. They're expected to dominate domestically. He's going to have to do something extraordinary in Europe. So I actually don't know what it does for his managerial career.
Well, it's a break. That's it for him, and that's all he's seen it. Like Tel Aviv is a very secular city. You can go about your business there in the same way that you would in any other what we might call Western city, and be largely blind to the stuff that's going on, if that's how you so choose. But it's the last time I'm going to address it. I hope that I don't know who was asking him the questions at the press conference yesterday, but I do hope that there
are follow-ons.
The last time you get asked.
100%. Did want to mention before we move on briefly, Martin Lipton standing by for us, the Irish men's sevens team qualifying again for the Olympic Games. Huge achievement for them. So that Ireland progressed to the knockout stages first as Pool A winners. They had beaten Poland, Italy and Germany, and then overcame Belgium in the quarterfinals, Portugal in the last 4, and yesterday brilliant 26 points to 12 win over Great Britain to crown that European Games glory and the ticket to the Paris Games, of course, next year. The women's team qualifying for the first time quite recently as well, so huge achievement. I mean, massive.
Bit of breaking news there that Dan McDonald reporting in the Irish Independent that Stephen Kenny will get the chance to bring Ireland into the France and Holland games. I mean, this is as expected, but his performance, Dan writes in the Irish Independent, was discussed in the regular monthly meeting of the FAI board last night, with standard review of the June window just one of the number of topics on the agenda, and he will stay there.
Interesting developments, perhaps unsurprising as you say, but definitely I guess a bit of relaxation for Stephen Kenny now that he can move on and push on with those two games.